The heat was a living thing in Nima, a constant, heavy blanket that settled in your lungs and clung to your skin. For Kofi, it was the only constant he'd ever known, besides the gnawing emptiness left by his father. They called him 1 pound, a grim joke from the local street boss, Morro, who claimed his father, a small-time hustler, had sold him for a single pound of a substance that wasn't even worth the trouble. It wasn't true, of course. His father had simply disappeared one night, leaving a mountain of small debts and a son who was now the sole heir to his bad reputation. Kofi's hustle was simple. He ran errands for the traders, negotiated small-time deals for stolen goods, and kept his head down. He wasn't a gangster, not yet, but he moved in their shadows, close enough to feel the cold of their steel and the heat of their tempers. He lived in a shack that leaned precariously against another, a makeshift home cobbled together from corrugated iron and plywood. His only real possession was a worn-out leather-bound journal, a gift from a kind schoolteacher before he dropped out. In it, he scribbled ideas for a life he knew he couldn't have, a life without the constant fear of a machete and the stink of uncollected trash. One evening, as the sun bled orange and purple across the sky, Morro's enforcer, a man named Blade, found him. 1 pound, Blade said, his voice a low growl that carried the weight of a threat. Your father's death. It's overdue. Morro is running out of patience. Kofi's blood ran cold. The debt was old, but in the streets, debts never died. I've got nothing, Kofi said, his voice a whisper. Blade smiled, a chilling expression that didn't reach his eyes. Then find something, boy. Morro needs a problem solved, and you're looking like the solution. Kofi's problem turned out to be a man named Yosef, a rival money launderer who had gotten too comfortable. Morro wanted Yosef's ledger, a small, unassuming book that held the keys to his entire operation. It was a suicide mission, and Kofi knew it. But a mission from Morro was non-negotiable. He spent the next few days casing Yosef's hideout, a fortified storefront in a busier, slightly more upscale part of Nima. That's where he first saw her. Her name was Oma, a quiet girl who sold roasted plantain from a small street cart. But she was different. She watched people, her eyes missing nothing, and she had a way of moving that was both graceful and invisible. Kofi noticed she was particularly observant of Yosef's shop. He dismissed her at first, just another person trying to survive. But on the night he planned to make his move, he saw her again. She was standing across the street, a hooded figure watching him. As he was about to slip into an alley, a guard on Yosef's building shifted his weight, revealing a small, nearly invisible tripwire. Kofi froze, his heart pounding in his chest. Before he could react, he saw Oma's hand gesture, a quick, almost imperceptible flick of her fingers towards the wire. He understood immediately. She wasn't trying to warn the guards, she was warning him. He adjusted his path, avoiding the trap, and made his way to the back of the building. She had saved him from a very real, and likely deadly, mistake. He found the ledger, just as Morro had said, and escaped. But he couldn't get the image of Oma's silent warning out of his head. He knew he had to find her again. She was his ticket to not only surviving this job, but maybe, to a life beyond it. Oma's reason for watching Yosef's shop was simple. Yosef owed her family money, too, a small fortune that had left her father bedridden and her mother selling everything they owned. She hadn't known what Kofi was up to, only that he was clumsy and reckless, and she couldn't stand to see another life lost to Yosef's greed. Their first real meeting wasn't a romantic one, it was a tense confrontation in a back alley where she was preparing her cut. "Why did you help me?" Kofi demanded, holding up the ledger he'd recovered. Oma looked at him, her eyes guarded but not unkind. Yosef is a vulture, she said simply. I don't need his blood on my hands, or yours. The words were a lightning strike. He explained his situation with Morro, and the pressure he was under. He opened the ledger, a leather-bound book full of names and numbers, and showed her what he'd found. Yosef was planning a big score, a final delivery of cash and goods before he fled the country. He had a mole inside Morro's operation. The ledger revealed the pickup location, time, and the traitor's name, Blade. This was their breakthrough. Not just a book of deaths, but a chance to turn the tables on Morro and Yosef at the same time. Oma, with her sharp mind and even sharper eyes, mapped out a plan. They would intercept Yosef's delivery, not to keep it, but to use it as leverage. Their partnership deepened as they worked, a strange dance of trust and shared desperation. Late one night, huddled over a stolen map, their fingers brushed. In the dim light of a street lamp, their eyes met. The danger was still real, but for the first time, Kofi felt a different kind of heat, the one that started in his chest, a slow, steady rhythm that had nothing to do with fear. Sif's drop-off point, a rundown warehouse near the Coral Lagoon, just as Blade and Morro's crew were making their move. They would be two ghosts in the middle of a storm, slipping in and out with the valuable cargo. But things never went as planned in Nima. They got to the warehouse first, an hour early, their hearts hammering a frantic rhythm against their ribs. The air was thick with the smell of salt and decay, the only sounds the lapping of the water and the distant hum of traffic. Oma, ever the strategist, had them waiting in the shadows of a rusted shipping container. Kofi watched her, the way the moonlight caught the silver sheen of her earrings, the way her brow furrowed in concentration. He realized he wasn't just thinking about the plan anymore, he was thinking about her. He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. This is crazy, he whispered, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. I know, she replied, her voice barely audible. But I'm not scared. He didn't believe her, but he also realized he wasn't scared either, not with her beside him. Just then, the first car pulled up, not Yosef's, but Morro's. Blade was in the passenger seat. They'd been tipped off. Yosef had planned a double cross, giving Morro the location and framing Kofi and Oma as the thieves. The love they had just found was now a target. They were trapped between two warring factions, and their silent plan was turning into a deadly fight for their lives. The whispers of love were silenced by the screech of tires and the first crack of a broken bottle. They had to run, their newfound bond now a desperate anchor in a sea of enemies. Warehouse erupted into a symphony of chaos. Shouts, the crunch of glass, and the guttural roar of a diesel engine filled the night. Kofi and Oma, their hands still clasped, sprinted through the labyrinth of shipping containers, a volley of curses and threats trailing them. Blade, a man with a singular focus, was in hot pursuit, his boots thudding against the concrete like a relentless drumbeat. They were running not for the cargo, but for their very lives, their love story a fragile flame in the middle of a battlefield. They managed to slip through a rusted back gate, but the street offered little refuge. Yosef's men were there, blocking their escape, their faces lit by the glow of streetlights. Kofi shoved Oma behind him, his heart a furious drum. Go, he yelled. I'll hold them off. But Oma was not a girl to be left behind. She picked up a loose metal pipe, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination he'd never seen before. We're in this together, she said, her voice steady. They fought their way out of the alley, a desperate, clumsy ballet of survival. Kofi took a glancing blow to his head, a sharp, blinding pain that brought him to his knees. As he staggered, he saw Oma, a whirlwind of fury, use the pipe to knock one of Yosef's men to the ground. She pulled him up, her arm around his waist, and they stumbled away, leaving the bloody chaos behind them. They had escaped, but the price was everything. They had no cargo, no money, and now a citywide manhunt on their heads. They had lost the breakthrough that was meant to save them. All they had left was each other and the knowledge that the love they found was real, forged in the very fire that had consumed their future. They ate for days, moving from one forgotten corner of Nima to another, living off what little Omar had saved and the kindness of strangers who recognized the look of two people buzzing with the news of the failed heist, and their faces were everywhere, crude drawings posted on walls and whispered about in every alley. The gangster life they had briefly touched had rejected them, spitting them back out, bruised and broken, but not defeated. One night, huddled together on a makeshift rooftop, Kofi looked at Omar. The moonlight cast her face in a soft silver glow, and he saw not the tough girl from the street, but the woman he loved, the woman who had saved his life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his father's old journal. "This is all I have left," he said, a note of defeat in his voice. Omar took it from him, her fingers tracing the one letter. She didn't see a symbol of failure, she saw a promise. "No," she said, her voice firm. "This is a map. This is your future." She opened it, pointing to the scribbled ideas, the small drawings of machines, the notes on trading. She didn't see the chaos he had tried to escape, she saw a hidden talent. "We can build something. We don't need Morro's money or Yosef's schemes. We have what they don't, brains, and each other." In that moment, he saw it too. The breakthrough wasn't about a big score or a suitcase of cash. It was about them, together, using their smarts to build a life, a real one, far from the shadows. The city might still be a jungle, but for the first time, Kofi wasn't just surviving in it, he was building a home, with the only woman he'd ever loved, and a future that was truly their own.